Hello, everybody. Today we're doing What If Deku Had a Learning Quirk, Part 1. I am so incredibly sorry for, not being here a little. Yeah, I don't know what to do. You see, we haven't been getting exactly popular stuff, I'm just saying. So, no, new rules. I would say, 500 views, and we'll get a part 2. Most likely a series if it gets over 500, because that's decently popular. Also, no also. Yeah. So, this is Keto. On to the video. Okay, people, so we start the video off when Izuku is 4, because nothing really changes before that, as you'd imagine. So when Izuku hops onto his computer that day to watch the new All Might clips that would be out, because he had just the other day heard about All Might's new fight with this villain. And Izuku, who was actually with his mother at the grocery store at that point, actually saw it up close while his mother was rushing him away. It was this guy in a black mask, but Izuku thought the fight would have clips of it, and Izuku was going to watch it a couple times because it was cool. He didn't find any. Izuku said, "No, I don't want to watch it on my old camera. Please no," as he looks up the clip against the black mask man, and he finds nothing on it. Most sites just never knew of its existence. As Izuku says, "Oh, that's a bummer," as he brings his mother in, and she says, "What is it, Izuku?" As Izuku says, "The fight from the other day with all the other guy. It's not on here." As Inko's like, "Oh, that sucks." And yeah, that's basically that entire interaction. Anyway, we skip to the day he actually gets his quirk examined. So one day when Izuku is in class, his teachers noticed something. When all the students were just learning counting and everything, because this is like pre-K, I'm pretty sure. And Izuku immediately, when they were doing like a pre-test for the entire year, Izuku aces it. And, most of the teachers just think, oh, well, he could just be extremely smart. But they did find something weird, that they only did one lesson briefly on the rest of the forms of math, and Izuku seemed to completely master that to a certain degree. As they inform Inko on this end, she's very happy for Izuku, but that day they also go to the Quirk doctor. When Izuku gets out of the testing room and the doctor is gathering his results, he comes out and says, "Well, Miss Midoriya, you have a awesome quirk for your son. It seems he has a quirk that helps him learn new things and abilities faster. Though he probably can't be a hero, but he maybe could if he took up like sword fighting. if I were to give you recommendations, Miss Midoriya. As she's like, oh yeah, that's awesome. As Izuku says, yeah, I'll be the coolest swordsman ever, and I'll be the #1 hero. As the next day, Izuku took up Taekwondo lessons because he was adamant on this. And when his classmates heard about Izuku's quirk, they were just like, as they didn't know how good and like how fast. By like fast, I mean you briefly can explain it. Like you can talk about something, or he could use, say, a sword for 5 minutes, and he'll immediately be quite exceptional at it. Like he'll just spend a couple. Yeah, you get him. Okay, I'll stop the rant. And yeah, so we fast forward tons of years, all the way until middle school happens. When that happens, Izuku had by this time been a black belt at Taekwondo. That's it. And he had tried swords a couple times, but the way he used it, his mother really didn't approve of, because she was scared that one day she'd come in and he'd accidentally swing at her. And she didn't want that. So Izuku was good at it, but she didn't allow it around the house, as you'd imagine, or near the house. So he always had to go somewhere else, away from her. So, yeah. When Izuku arrives on his last day of middle school, Bakugou immediately meets him at the entrance and pushes him down the stairs, as Izuku is like, what was that for? As Bakugou says, what's this? As he says, oh, these are for the future, you say. As he's like, what are you talking about? As he says, please no. As Katsuki Bakugou reads out the title, Hero Notes for the Future. What future, Izuku? Don't make me laugh. You have none. I mean, if you think about it, if you jumped off a building, maybe you'd be lucky enough to have a quirk in your next life. I'm just giving you some friendly advice here. As Izuku says, why would you say that? As Katsuki Bakugou says, well, it's the truth. As he grabs 2 of the journals and burns them up. As Izuku says, no. As one of the teachers comes out and says, Katsuki, stop at this instant. As he's like, whatever. As he walks off. As Izuku just starts crying at the start of, at the entrance of the building. As the teacher says, are you okay? As Izuku's like, yeah, I'm fine. And yeah, that's how that interaction goes. So when Izuku comes in, the homeroom teacher welcomes him like, hello, Izuku. And, the other kid saw him as a teacher's pet, but the teacher liked him so much, only for the fact that he was the only one throughout his entire class that had all A's and all A pluses. Teacher's pet. So, yeah. Also, he tries to step up to Katsuki, but he doesn't have a lot of confidence in himself. So, Izuku and everybody else picked on him for that. But if Izuku had the confidence, he could probably defeat Katsuki quite easily. Kind of like Rock Lee, except you take away the confidence. So, yeah. Like Zenitsu, okay. So, Izuku, when he gets through the rest of his day, after the UA thing also, Katsuki pushes him into a wall after school and says, "What are you thinking, Izuku? You know I'm the only one who's going to be going to UA high school. Why would you even think about signing up for that place? Once again, I recommend the roof." As Izuku says, "You'll never know until you try." As Izuku looks over to Katsuki as Katsuki says, "What do you mean by you'll never know till you try? You know you can't do it, but you still try to make me as mad as I can get. You twerp." As he goes to kick Izuku, but Izuku dodges it and actually catches it and throws him into the wall. As Katsuki says, "What the heck, Izuku?" As Izuku says, "Sorry, Kachan. You can't be going around being so rude to everyone." As Izuku looks over towards his notebooks that are still burnt up and says, "That's what you get." And when Izuku is walking back home, he says, "Oh my, it's the All Might TV special today. I have to go home quick." As he starts bolting towards his house, and he even takes a shortcut under an underpass. When Izuku sprints through it, he runs into a weird green substance. As he tries to get back up, he's pinned to the ground by the substances. When all his limbs are put to the ground, as he says, "What the?" As the green sludge monster doesn't even have to reveal himself, as it begins pouring into his mouth. And Izuku begins being choked by the green sludge as he slowly loses the ability to breathe. Izuku begins pounding on the sludge villain's sludge, as the sludge villain just says, "Just give it up, kid. You're already mine." As All Might bursts through the sewers and says, "Ha ha ha, I am here." As he says, "Detroit Smash!" As the massive gust of wind fills the underpass as the sludge villain goes flying around the entire thing. As Izuku goes to catch his breath, he looks up to see All Might as he says, "All Might?" As he falls unconscious. As All Might just says, "We have a super fan, I see." As he starts reading some of the notebooks. As Izuku wakes up, and All Might says, "You have a very vast knowledge of the Hero Society, I see. Good for you, kid. And it seems you're very skilled in Taekwondo and swords. Good job." As Izuku says, Thank you, All Might. Can you sign my notebook, please?" As Izuku looks over to All Might, and All Might says, "Of course. But why would I? When I already did." As he does a thumbs up motion. As Izuku opens his notebook to see the signature, as he's like, "This will be a family treasure for generations to come." As All Might says, "Haha, yeah. Well, kid, I gotta get going. I have to return this villain to the police." As Izuku says, Wait, as All Might jumps off. Little did he know, Izuku was holding onto his leg, as All Might questions himself, like, why am I feeling heavier? What the? As he looks down at his leg and says, Kid, what are you doing? That's dangerous. As Izuku says, I have a question. As All Might says, whatever. As they arrive at the roof. And when they arrive there, Izuku and All Might finally land there. And All Might asks, so what is it, kid? You can't interrupt me like that. That was very dangerous. And Izuku's, well, I was wondering if I could be a hero. As All Might says, oh, what do you mean by that? As Izuku says, do you think someone without a very strong quirk could become a hero? As All Might says, I do. I think you can. With your expertise in taekwondo and swordsmanship, I definitely think you can. So, follow your dreams, kid. And if you go to UA High School, I'll see you there. As Izuku says, All Might at UA? Oh my gosh. As All Might jumps off again. And Izuku says, okay, that's great. Now I definitely have to see the TV special. As he runs over towards his house. But as he's running once again, he hears an explosion. As he looks over and says, fine. The TV special can wait, I guess. As he arrives at the scene to see a massive explosion pursuing. And down the buildings, he sees Katsuki Bakugou being choked by the sledge villain. And Izuku looks over and sees a couple heroes in front of the crowd as he wonders to himself, why is no one doing anything? And Izuku then looks over to the disheveled All Might and says, sir, do you know why they're not doing anything? As All Might says, no, I do not, young one. I wish I could do something, but I don't have a quirk. As Izuku says, oh, okay. As he then says, I won't let him die like this. As he runs through the crowd and through the heroes line. And as he's rushing towards the... One sec, guys. As Izuku continues running, and he starts clawing at the sledge villain, but with style. As Izuku continues clawing at the sledge villain. Stop. Okay. And when eventually All Might says, enough is enough. As he jumps up in the air and buffs up and sends a massive Detroit smash, even changing the weather. As the sledge villain is once again blown across the entire, most of the building. Sorry about that, guys. As Izuku and Bakugou are eventually talked to by the heroes, Izuku is just hated on, basically. They lecture him and tell him that was very dangerous, as the other heroes praise him about his quirk. And Izuku, along with Bakugou, meet up at some random alleyway. Well, more so just intersection. And Bakugou says, I didn't need your help there, Deku. As Izuku says, you can believe what you want, I'll believe what I want to. As Bakugou says, stupid nerd, as he walks away. As Izuku continues walking towards his house, as All Might then appears around the corner and says, "Oh, you," as he hiccups the blood out and says, "Sorry about that. I was that man you saw there. And, well, I deem you fit of being a top hero at UA High School." As Izuku says, I know I could. I could quite easily beat my friend too, but I just let his ego sit there. As All Might says, oh, okay, and? As Izuku says, there's no and after that. As All Might says, well, I deem you worthy of my quirk, one for all. As Izuku says, what do you mean, deem me worthy? As All Might says, I'm going to pass it on to you. But first, I need to acquire the information that you are most certainly strong enough to handle my quirk. As Izuku and All Might begin their training, and for 3 months, All Might just tests him for the first couple times. And he destroys the tests. After one normal deadlift of, say, like 180, you got a solid ton there. Yeah, he's like Rock Lee on steroids. As Izuku, he can learn and he acquires things fast. His quirk is evolving. Also, guys, sorry to not mention it, but his quirk is called Rise. Like his rise in intelligence. Yeah. Anyway, as on the final day of the 3rd month, All Might says, well, kid, I deem you worthy of my quirk, one for all. As Izuku says, I know. As All Might says, rude, as he plucks the hair from his head. As Izuku says, what? Why did you do that? As All Might says, eat this. As Izuku says, what? All Might says, eat this, eat my hair. As Izuku says, no, why would I? And All Might just says, well, sorry about this. All Might says, well, it's how you get the quirk. You need to inherit my DNA. And this is the most proficient way, I'd say. Look, kid, I didn't exactly like it either when I did it, but I got through it, and now I'm the #1 hero. So either you choose your future, or you're a weakling. Choose. As Izuku says, fine, as he swallows the hair immediately when he gets it. As Izuku says, why did I agree? As All Might says, well, let's wait 2 hours, and when that happens, we'll start testing your quirk. 2 hours later, Izuku feels a surge of power in his arm, as All Might says, it seems your quirk has awakened. Well, your second quirk. And one for all, with the quirk you have, and I did read up on this, it seems you'll be able to get the hand of one for all very quickly. Maybe even the strength part too. As Izuku says, yeah, I think I already understand a little bit of what to do. As he says, you have to regulate it through your whole body, correct? As All Might says, yeah, I didn't think you'd understand that so quickly. As Izuku powers 0.2% of the entire quirk through his body and says, I can't do it very much now. Let me try out 100. As All Might... No, don't! As Izuku chokes on his own blood as he spits out a huge amount of it, but says, "Don't worry, I got this," as his muscles immediately turn purple as he falls unconscious. When he eventually wakes up the next week, All Might and Inko sitting at his hospital bed, Izuku says, "What happened?" As All Might says, "Young Midoriya," as Inko immediately hugs her son and says, "My baby! How did this happen? Who is this guy? How did your entire body get broken?" As Izuku's, I don't, as All Might says, "Relax, Miss Midoriya. I'm his trainer." As Inka says, I know you're trying to think of an excuse, and it won't work." As Izuku says, "Relax, Mom. We were training, and I'm the one who's been cleaning that beach, and I got crushed by a car." As she says, You got what?" As All Might says, "Yeah, it was tragic." As Izuku, the next week later, he arrives back at the beach and says, "Well, All Might, I'll try and see how far I can go up now." As he goes up to 1% through his whole body, then 5, then 10, then 30. But when he goes to 50, his right arm immediately breaks as Izuku screams and is like, "Ow! Ow! That hurt." "It seems 30 is my limit so far, All Might." As All Might says, "Don't worry, kid. This is your second week of using your quirk, and you're already at 30%. That's amazing. Even if I could use it at 100% at the first time, not everyone is gifted like me." As Izuku says, "Yeah, that's fair." And All Might says, "Well, kid, use 30% for now, and we'll train up from there. And for the next 4 months, Izuku trains his body to be even stronger. And once he got in his, quote, peak physical condition, he talks to All Might again. And they only have 3 months left now. As All Might says, "Well, let's go from 30 and hopefully to 50 by the end of these 3 months." As Izuku says, "Yeah." As Izuku notices this and says, "All Might, look." As All Might comes over, as he's channeling 100% through his right arm, no trouble. As Izuku says, "It seems if I power the entire quirk through my body, it strains the quirk itself. And if I power it through simply one arm, it can handle it just fine." As All Might says, "Interesting." As he begins training with his one arm with 100% and adapting to it. Then he gets to his left arm, then his entire upper body, then his right leg, then his left leg. And eventually he can switch with no problem through them all, but he can only go from to 60 throughout his whole body at one time. And that is his full power right now. As Izuku looks over to All Might and says, "Also, well, I was out the other day. I appear to unlock some things. 2 people came up to me when I was sleeping in this weird world. And one was a very beautiful woman, and one this bald guy that had a very cool jacket. They both told me it was this time for their quirk to shine in the new user and the prodigy. I don't understand what it's telling me, though. As All Might says, amazing. Can you show me these abilities? As Izuku starts floating, and he uses Black Whip, but it's quite deadly still. As All Might gets whacked by it, and he blocks it with his arm. But he notices it rips the costume, as All Might says, interesting. As Izuku says, yeah, it's weird. As All Might looks over to him and says, well, young Midoriya, I believe that if you keep working at this for the rest of the months, maybe you can master these quirks, and you'll have them in your arsenal. And for the rest of the months, he does that, and also does a little of studying towards the end. And, just to, touch up on his smarts. So, when the day arrives, they get to UA High School. As Izuku looks over to All Might and says, All Might? As All Might says, what is it, kid? As Izuku says, do you think this will be enough to pass the exam? As All Might says, most certainly, kid. You could destroy tons of buildings in one shot with your quirk at max power right now. Even if you're only at 65, you can even float, and you have Black Whip ability. You'd be an incredibly strong opponent if I were to face you now. Not that I couldn't beat you, but you'd be incredibly strong. As Izuku says, understood, All Might. As that was the last day before the entrance exam, and that entire night, Izuku stayed up, and he increased his limiter to 70%. And he was incredibly strong now. And I don't know yet, but in the current manga, if you guys can, comment what percent Izuku is at right now with One For All. If it's 100, that's good to know, because I believe he almost has all the past users' quirks. And I won't give him the third one yet, because even if I'll say he has 100%, I want him to gain experience, like life experience, because, he only just got this quirk 10 months ago. Not even a year yet. And he already does have Black Whip and Float. So, Izuku, when he goes into the exam, he aces the entire RAN exam. He gets second place out of all of UA next to Nezu, because he was like a genius, and his entire quirk was dedicated to intelligence. So, yeah. After that, Izuku goes over to his designated city he was assigned to. As he looks over to his supposed enemies and sees the blue-haired boy and says, he was the one who interrupted President Mike. I'll make sure he doesn't get robots. As he looks over to a girl who's pacing around, as Izuku walks over, as the blue boy tries to stop him, but he just flicks him into the wall, basically. As Izuku had leveled up, certainly, in self-confidence. As he goes over to the girl and says, Hi. As Ochako looks over and says, oh, what do you want? As Izuku says, don't worry. It won't be that bad. I bet you could destroy this entire exam. As she says, thank you. As her face turns a little red. And, yeah. As President Mike says, start, everyone. As everyone suddenly starts running because they were caught off guard. And Izuku looks over to Ochako, and side by side, they both float next to each other. As she says, I didn't know you had a flying quirk too. As Izuku says, it's one of them, yeah. As she goes onto the ground, but Izuku stays up there. And when the two of them run into a massive horde of robots, Uraka tries to make one float, but it starts firing at her. As Izuku makes a wall with his black whip, as it covers, it makes an entire dome around her. And she's like, this boy's quirk, it's amazing. As the rest of his black whip destroys the rest of the robots, smashing them all. As Nezu says, I'll make sure this genius has at least a challenge, as he presses a massive red button that said warning, as 10 zero-pointers appear right under Izuku, as he picks up Ochako and puts her on a building next to him, as he says, I don't know how we can get away from this situation. If we try and fly away, they'll use their lasers and they'll try and attack us with that. As Ochako says, yeah? So what do we do? As Izuku says, I'll use my quirk, right? As he says, well, see ya. As he just jumps off the building. As he uses his float ability to stop his fall every once in a while. And then just midair, just jumps towards the zero-pointers. And with 70% of one for all, just destroys them all quite easily. Every time he punches his way through it, jumps off the waist of that robot, and punches his way through the next. Eventually, he destroys all of them, and sees a horde of three-pointers, as Izuku gets out Black Whip and says, take this! As with his two hands, he claps the two waves of Black Whip, slicing and dicing all of the robots. As an hour later, the exam is over. As when the exam is over, he goes over to Recovery Girl's office, where Ochako Uraka, the person he had met during the exam, was waiting for him. As she says, are you okay? I never got your name either. As Izuku looks back to her and says, well, as he smiles just like in this picture, if you can see it. As he says, my name's Izuku Midoriya. As she blushes like a tomato and says, my name's Ochako Uraka. Pleased to meet you, Izuku. As he says, don't sweat it, it's fine. My friends call me Deku, but they're just mad that I'm smarter than them. You can call me that too if you want. Don't worry, I'll keep it a secret. As he walks away, as she's just stunned. And Izuku, one sec, guys. Oh, dang. Okay, so we continue off, and Izuku arrives at his house as Inko says, well, Izuku, how do you think you did? As Izuku says, I think I did amazing, honestly, Mom. I don't think any other kid could contend with my power. As she says, Well, your swordsmanship is good. If your swords really are that strong, I'll invest in that. As Izuku says, okay, Mom. As a month later, they get a message in the mail. Well, they get a letter. As Inko immediately bum rushes towards Izuku's room and bangs on it. As he opens the door and says, what is it, Mom? As she reaches out and hands him the letter from UA High School. As she says, it's from UA. As he says, thank you. As he closes the door and goes over to his desk and rips it open. And Izuku says, oh my, as the holo projector opens and All Might does his usual message. And yeah. So Izuku, all excited, says, this is gonna be amazing. Later on, when Izuku finally arrives at his first day of UA High School, he remarks to himself and says, this will be a great journey. Well, let's go. As he walks into UA High School, talking to his new friend, Ochaku Uraka. As they begin talking, Izuku remarks to himself that every time he looked at her, she became what was the equivalent of a tomato. And he thought it was a little weird. As Izuku says, well, how much points do you think you got? As she says, I hope at least enough to get into the class with you. Anyway, which one did you get into? As Izuku says, I got into Class A. As Ochako says, oh my gosh, same! Let's go! As Izuku says, awesome. Well, let's go. As they continue trying to find the classroom. As Ochako says, we can't find it anywhere, Izuku. As Izuku says, don't worry. We'll find it. We won't be late. As eventually, a couple minutes later, they find the class and go in. As the entire class is talking. And Izuku was expecting just a quiet class. And if anything, for the two of... Oh, sorry, guys. Ochako and him to be the most talkative. But no, they got Bakugou and they got Ida. And, you know, the other side characters. Anyway. After a conversation, Eraserhead interrupts them and says, what are you kids doing? That was 8 seconds. Why the I'm just gonna stop. I keep knocking against the screen with my charger. Why am I even touching it? As Izuku looks over to Ochako as Eraserhead says, kids, pests. That was 8 seconds too long. You've been talking far too long. That will be needing some fixing. If you're here to make friends, why don't you just leave? I am your homeroom teacher, Shota Aizawa. I will be teaching you this year for UA High School, Class 1A. If you know my reputation last year, I'll give you a fact about me. Well, I expelled my entire class last year, as everyone is shocked. As Aizawa says, don't worry. I expect more from you all, especially you, as he points towards Bakugou and says, with your ego and a half, you better be good. As Bakugou says, what did you say about me? As Aizawa tells them to meet him outside and to put on their gym uniforms. As Izuku and his entire class says, yes. As they all start walking towards the locker room. And eventually when they all finish putting that on and getting outside, Shota Izawa tells them to throw a baseball. As Izuku says, "Understood, sir," as he charges one for all through his entire right arm and does 100% as Black Whip starts surrounding his hand as it attaches itself onto the baseball. As he says, "Go!" as the Black Whip releases and he throws it as far as he can, as the entire class feels a massive gust of wind, as even Izuku is sent flying back. As Aizawa looks at his phone and he says, "Oh, that's interesting." As it says it says 9,543 meters. As the entire class is stunned. As Izuku says, that stung. As Aizawa says, "Well, let's see you go all out." As Izuku says, "Oh, a second throw." As Aizawa says, "Well, put your back into it this time, if it only stung." As Izuku screams as he throws it and says, "Take this!" As his entire right arm is glowing with black and green energy as he throws it. And when it goes flying. As instead of going for distance, Izuku throws it as far up as he can. As Aizawa looks at his phone and says, "That's more like it," as it says infinity. Aizawa says, "If you get the number of infinity, that means it is either in space, or I simply can't track it anymore." As Izuku says, "Understood, sir." And yeah, that's how that goes. And after the entirety of the exams, Izuku gets third place because Momo is balanced and Bakugou is cool like that. It's just built different. Okay. We got 15 more minutes to make an hour-long video, and we're cool like that, so we will make it an hour long. So, the next week, or day, I don't know, sometime later, they have All Might's class, and when he bursts through the door like a normal person, the entire class is surprised and shocked. And when that happens, Izuku says, "Oh my gosh, it's All Might." And when that happens, All Might says, "Well, class, today we'll be doing hero training, specifically hero versus villains training. We'll be doing it in so-and-so place, I don't know. And you'll be testing out your new awesome hero costumes." And Izuku's looks like the one in the manga. If you guys don't know what it looks like, it's basically hoodless, and think of it like season 5 Izuku's costume right now, except hoodless, and Gran Torino's cape as a scarf. Pretty sure it's his cape. And yeah. So Izuku, when he draws lots, him and Uraraka get the same team. And when All Might decides finally what teams will go against what, he announces that Team A will go against Team D. And that would be Bakugou and Ida versus himself and Uraraka. By himself, I mean Izuku. So, yeah. When the match starts and Izuku and Ochako enter, Bakugou immediately bursts off towards Izuku at the start, as Izuku says, You can go towards the bomb. It'll only take a few minutes for him. As Izuku starts floating, and sorry about that, guys. He's annoying. As Black Whip comes out of Izuku, as it grabs Bakugou and slams him toward the ground, kind of like the Kurama hands that come out of Casey and Naruto. As Bakugou gets up and says, "That hurt. How'd you do that, nerd?" As the Black Whip throws him back up into the air, slamming him against the ceiling. As then it punches him towards the wall across the hallway he had just jumped through. As Bakugou disattaches himself from the wall and says, "Dang it, nerd. How are you so much stronger? And how all of a sudden do you have 3 quirks?" As Izuku powers his entire body with 70% and says, "I'm just simply stronger than you. Can't you accept it?" As Izuku, with extreme speeds with his sending 100% through only his right leg and left leg, appears right under Katsuki as he kicks Bakugou in the chin, sending him through the entire building. As Izuku sends a Black Whip after him and yanks him back down, throwing him down onto the floor. After the smoke dissipates, Bakugou, barely clinging to consciousness, looks up to Izuku and says, "How am I going to lose? No, I won't." As Izuku is right above him and says, "Just accept it." As he picks up Bakugou's grenade gauntlet and says, "What is this?" As Bakugou releases both pins of the gauntlets and aims it towards Izuku's face. As Izuku says, "What does?" As All Might screams, "Don't do that!" As Izuku tries to cover himself the most he could with the Black Whip, but he can only get so much. As the massive explosion happens, exploding both the first, second, and third floor. As the entire explosion finally dissipates, Izuku is revealed to be bloodied and against the floor, as Bakugou is also down on the ground, but he can't tie him up for the finishing blow. So now it's kind of like Uraraka versus Ida, as Izuku is just completely bloodied and beaten, as Izuku says, "That hurt," as he's about to fade into unconsciousness, as he sees Uraraka and Ida fall with their building falling, fall through the ceiling, as he sees a very narrow window that shows him where the bomb was. As he sends a Black Whip after it, he catches Uraraka with it and sends her towards it, as Ida says, "No!" as he falls onto Bakugou, as Bakugou spits out blood and says, "How dare you?" Steam engine. 4 eyes. As he falls unconscious, as Izuku starts crawling towards where the bomb had fallen, as Ochako and the rest of the floor had fallen onto the ground, as the bomb had fell out of the building. As Izuku was crawling towards it, Ochako starts running towards it, and Ida about to run towards it with his engines. Izuku, with his last remains of power for the day, thrusted her forward with his Black Whip as she touches the bomb. As Izuku says, "We won," as he falls unconscious, the black whip dissipating. As Ida says, "Dang." It seems the both of them are in a predicament, as he carries the two of them towards, what's her name? I need to think about that. Recovery Girl's office. And as that is happening, both Izuku and, the rest of Izuku's class finishes up their battles. As Izuku remarks to himself how he thinks he could have won without, the explosion happening, Bakugou says, "Caught you off guard, didn't I?" As Izuku says, "You have any idea how messed up my hands are after that? You point blank detonated an entire explosion on them." As Bakugou says, "And nerd?" As Izuku just laughs to himself. And yeah, that's how that goes. So, the rest of the matches in canon happen as they would. And after all those happened, Uraraka visitors. I can't speak. I'm not gonna say it. Visits her teammates, as she says, "Deku-kun, are you okay?" As he says, "Yeah, but that hurt a lot. We barely won, didn't we?" As she says, "You pushed me to victory. How would you not know?" As Izuku says, "Did I? I don't remember that." As we flash back when Izuku, after the explosion, that's actually when he himself went unconscious, but we'll say Nana continued the match. So yeah, that's how that goes. So the next day, our Razorhead arrives for class and says, "Well, class, today we'll be doing a little field trip. We'll be going to the Unforeseen Simulation Joint, or USJ for short. Well, follow me and file onto the bus." As later they file onto the bus and start talking to each other. And while that's happening, Froppy talks to Izuku, and they all start talking about how strong he is and how dangerous Bakugou seems to be with his gauntlets. As Bakugou says, "You're right about that. Did you see how Izuku went from completely fine to not at all? Yeah, I could have killed him, but I didn't. Because I knew that if the nerd had been so powerful, he'd most certainly be able to at least dodge a little. And considering I shot the both at his face, he most certainly blocked all of the ones from his face. And he just couldn't block his hands because they were using Black Whip." As they're all fascinated with his analysis or whatever. And eventually they do arrive at the USJ. And while that is happening, Fort 13 begins explaining everything about the USJ, Unforeseen Simulation Joint, as she calls it. As she says, "Well, students, today you will be doing support training, rescue training, and you will be doing it in all of the various zones of the USJ. most of all, you'll be doing it in the fire region, or as I like to call it, the destruction region. As she smiles, and Uraka says, how long will this activity take? As she looks over to Uraka and says, like 2 hours, I guess, as they enter the USJ. And when that happens, everyone files in, and Aizawa says, you guys are taking so long. As Izuku and the rest of his classmates finally file in, as Kirishima looks down to see Kirigiri starting to form in the middle. As Izuku says, oh, even fake villains. This is some high-quality place you got here, 13. And she says, that wasn't in the lesson, Aizawa. Did you add that? As he says, why would I add anything? Well, you said fake villains. As he immediately rushes over, as Izuku points towards the middle, as the portal starts expanding. And a man with a hand on his face, and the red eye glares at them, as Izuku sends a massive gust of wind with his flick of his finger. As it goes into the portal, they just hear a lot of clattering noises as villains start pouring out, quite angry, and a couple with glass even like in their skin, and some bleeding out from the glass. As Izuku says, so I seem to have broke something. As Aizawa says, 13, you keep the kids safe. As Aizawa puts on his goggles and rushes down the USJ stairs. And as that's happening, 13 looks towards the students and says, keep calm, everybody. We will be handling this. Nobody panic. As Aizawa begins clobbering all of the villains. As Izuku also continues to send some long-range attacks. As 13 also says, for all our long-range fighters, assist your teacher if you can. As all the long-range ones help, even like Denki. He shoots like finger guns with electricity at the villains. And yeah, before we get too far into it, guys, I'm going to stop there. Yeah, this was a really long video, and yeah, also I'm still very sorry about not uploading enough. And yeah, this is Kito signing off. Goodbye.